All right, so I'm going to ask you just 2 AMP questions before we go out to the audience. So Nikki and Matt, get ready. On AMP, so I think one of the big things about AMP is, to me at least, that it's not just a purely Google-owned initiative, right? I mean,
it's open source.
Right.
I mean,
so
anyone who wants to join in can join in.
Right.
Baidu joined in recently, or they committed that they would start using AMP instead of their own weird implementation. Sorry, it's not weird. It's their own
vastly inferior implementation. Is that the word you wanted to use?
You should not ever work in PR. But
I'm just trying to help.
You're not.
Okay, good. So the point is that, and this is where I want to get to the second part of it, because like what a lot of people worry about is that there have been other programs that Google have tried to push out there, and then that they've backed away from, right? And there's other programs out there that they've pushed out, and they probably should have backed away from. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about Google+.
Sorry, the what?
But this isn't just a Google program; it's an industry program, and Google's a large sponsor for it. But
yeah, so it is in our culture, and it's strongly encouraged internally that we experiment with things. Sometimes those experiments get launched, and we try it, and we see where it goes. Right. Sometimes they don't work out. Sometimes they work out, like Google News, Gmail, whatever. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they don't. And when they don't work out, then after a while, it doesn't make sense to push resources into it. So we will have to unlaunch it. Google is big. If we launch something, then it will get some traction at least. And then if we unlaunch it, then some people will be unhappy. With AMP, I don't think that's the case, mainly because it's an open source thing, and it's not just a Google thing. We are probably the biggest player in the AMP field. Well, maybe Baidu is bigger now. I don't know. One of the biggest players. But Twitter, Pinterest, and other platforms are also using AMP. They have their own caches, AMP caches that speed up load time. Right. So I don't think that this will go away anytime soon.
Right, that's kind of what I wanted to draw out. It's not a Google-only program, so people should have a lot of confidence.
Another thing is that I usually don't talk about things that I don't think that will have future. And I don't think that you've ever heard me talk about app indexing, for example, mainly because I didn't think that that's the right way to do things.
Right.
I also don't really talk about structured data because, in my opinion, we shouldn't rely on publisher markup to understand things. Like, we like challenges, and like relying on user input is generally not the way we do things.
Right.
So I also don't typically talk about structured data. But then AMP is vastly different from those programs or those products because it's not just Google. If it was just Google, then probably I would think differently. But because it's not just Google, I happily talk about it. Because even if at one point we decide to back out from AMP, there will still be other big players in the AMP community that will push this forward.
Sure, and there's a part of AMP, put aside the cache for a moment, there's a part of an AMP that is really just this idea that lets code our pages in a way that loads a lot faster.
Yeah.
So you could have no caches and still get a dramatic speed up.
Yeah, not as dramatic as with caches, but,
of course.
But still amazing speed up.
Yeah.